Welcome to part 12, approximately, of this video lecture series on Chapter 5. We are almost to the end, so hang on just a little longer, and we will get through this. So we're going to talk about, we've talked about a lot of aspects of working with Hyper-V as a hypervisor. One of the things you can do is add virtual hard disks. You might have a couple of different reasons for doing this. Say you want to increase the size of a given machine's storage capacity, or experiment with disk configuration. Say you've gone from a system which only needs one hard drive for, say, its boot partition. You've decided to add add a RAID configuration. You're going to need at least 2, possibly more, virtual hard disks to do that. Just for the purposes, I mean, even if you're doing a mirrored RAID on the boot partition, which is not necessarily a bad idea, you're going to need at least another hard disk. If you're doing a RAID array over and above the boot partition, you're going to need at least 2 more, if not 3 more. 2 for a mirror, 3 for a stripe set, at the very minimum. You can now, these, by definition, these disks are dynamically expanding. That's the default disk type. The maximum size is set for the disk is usually 127 gigs. And if you want your disk size to be something smaller than that, you actually have to set it manually. Say, for example, you don't have 120 gigs free on your system, and you don't want to run the risk, even with a thin provision disk, of running out of space by letting it grow and grow and grow forever. If you want, say, a 20 gig or a 40 gig or a 60 gig drive, you're going to have to set it manually for the purpose. With a fixed disk, you're going to set that size immediately, because a fixed disk, a thick provision disk in VMware terms, will allocate the entire space initially. There's another option, a differencing disk, which is basically tied to another hard disk. It's a bit like a linked clone, really. And of course, let's see. So the GUI looks like this. What you'll do is you'll go to your SCSI controller. You'll either add a hard drive to the existing SCSI controller, or you can add, like for example down here, if you want to pair those drives on the same SCSI controller, you can pick the hard drive and do that. Alternatively, you could add a whole other SCSI controller. You can either you can create a new disk, or you can pair it to a physical hard disk. You can indicate your controller. Now, one thing you can do, you can edit a hard disk, but not if there's a checkpoint set. So say, for example, you clicked through too fast and you realize, wait a minute, I really didn't want a dynamically expanding VHD that could grow to 127 gigs. I don't need that. I want this to stay within, say, 20, 30 gig sandbox. If Hyper-V has done you the favor of setting a checkpoint, you'll have to nuke that checkpoint in order to in order to make this edit button a possibility, and then you can go in and change things. So there's that. In the next video, we'll actually, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. We're talking about hard drives. This was going to be a whole other video, but I think I'm going to just keep talking. Differencing disks, I mentioned them before. So you can share a virtual hard disk between 2 files. The parent has, there's a parent copy, and then your child differencing disk. So this should sound a whole lot like linked clones. The parent and a child. If you want to add a disk, you just do the new hard disk button. You select your differencing disk option. You browse to your parent hard disk file, and then you make some changes. Now, after you've done that, after you've created your hard disk, you can edit it. You can compact it if you need to regain space on your dynamic disk. But make sure you don't shrink it past what you need to do. You can turn a dynamic disk into a fixed disk. Say, for example, you've gotten everything you need, and you've built your config, and it's 20 gigs, and you want to and you want to make sure that your hard drive doesn't run out of space. You can set it to a fixed disk capacity, and it will grow the size of that virtual hard disk file, even if it's not full of data. It may fill the rest out with ones and zeros. You can also increase the size of a fixed or a dynamic disk. So if you make a decision that says, if you decide, hey, I don't want a disk that could grow to 127 gigs, I want 60. Then later you decide, hey, I need 80. What you can do is actually expand your disk, essentially. This is also something you can do in VMware. Then you can go into, particularly say, I'm assuming in this case that we are dealing with Windows operating systems virtualized in Hyper-V. So you expand your disk, then you can go into Windows, and it will see that extra hard drive space at the end of the drive, which is suddenly magically there. What you can do, you don't have to create a no partition. In your disk management utilities in the MMC, Microsoft Management Console, you can tell it to expand the volume into the new empty space. This is actually something I've done. I started a VM, I realized I hadn't given it enough space. I gave it some more space, and then went inside the VM, inside the guest OS, and pointed my disk management utilities at the empty drives and said, grow. And presto changeo, it grew. So there's that. The next one, I'm going to talk about virtual switches right quick, and then we'll have the summary. So thank you for watching, and I'll be right back.